Hi everyone. So first, I wanted to welcome you back to our online-based lectures. And before we get going, I wanted to take a few minutes just to kind of cover how the course will be run from here on out. I know the COVID-19 pandemic sort of hit us without warning, and so we're all moving from this hybrid type format to a fully online class. And so I know I sent you guys an email and other reminders about how the course changes would be implemented, but just because I have your attention now in this online lecture, I wanted to just say that the last 5 weeks of our semester are going to be completely online, so we're not going to meet face to face. We may do some sort of virtual class meeting, but it's not going to be face to face. This includes all of the stuff that we're going to be doing. So this includes all of the lecture material that we're delivering now. You're going to take quizzes online, assignments you'll download from Canvas, you'll fill them out, and then you'll submit them via email to me. And of course, we're also going to have an online final exam. So I know this is going to take a bit of adjusting for both of us. And so I just ask for your patience as I learn about this online platform, and that you guys also get used to having this class be fully online. One thing that I've done to try and help that is I've created a weekly discussion section, and I've posted that on Canvas on our discussion page. I think it's called Week 11, the Immune System, and I want all of us to use this discussion board kind of as a catch-all to discuss any type of question that we have about the lecture material. If you found a particular slide confusing or a particular question from one of the lecture worksheets, you didn't fully get the answer, I want you to post there, and maybe some of your classmates can come help you out. I will also be watching this discussion section quite closely, and if there's no response to any specific question, I'll jump in and answer questions in semi-real time there. And also relating to the assignments and things that I'm going to have you turn in, I will post directions with how to turn in the assignment for that week on Canvas. I'll probably also include it in these online lectures, so you'll get it from multiple places, but you will know how to turn it in and what I expect for that particular week. So with that, let's get started. So today we have a very, very timely discussion on how our immune system works and how our immune system responds to specific diseases. Now, this is probably, at the forefront of all of our minds because of, our shelter-in-place order and our self-imposed quarantine here in Philadelphia. And so now we're going to learn about these specific diseases and how our bodies actually react and help us fight those environmental, what are called pathogens. And so first, before we get into specifically agents of specific types of diseases, and as well as what causes disease and how our immune system responds to those diseases, I wanted to stop very briefly and just discuss some common terms that we might come up against within this lecture. And so a disease, we probably have heard this term before, but the definition that we'll use for disease is any change other than injury that disrupts the normal function of the body. Now, the disease-causing agents that cause specific infectious diseases, the scientific term for those are pathogens. And so you may have seen some mention of pathogens in the news with all the COVID-19 articles coming out. And you might have been confused with that particular term, but all it means is a disease-causing agent. And you may have referred to these, in your normal life as germs. So you don't want to catch germs, right? You wash your hands to prevent the spreading of germs. And so there are a number of types of pathogens that cause specific types of disease. Probably one of the most relevant, especially considering, the social distancing and the quarantine that are in place, are because of specific types of viruses. So viruses come in many shapes and sizes. There are many types of viruses, and they can infect nearly every type of cell in our body. And every type of organism has specific viruses that they can catch. Some common viruses that we may have heard of, the common cold is a virus. The flu, which seasonally becomes very important, and you've probably heard about the flu very recently because we've gotten our recent round of flu shots and whatever the case may be. And famous, obviously, in the last few months, the novel coronavirus, the disease from the coronavirus being COVID-19. And another that you may have heard in a historical context is smallpox, which you can see someone suffering from a very severe form of this particular disease. This was actually, extremely deadly. Now we actually have a very effective vaccine for smallpox, and so probably this day and age, especially, you guys listening to this lecture probably don't even know anybody that's ever had smallpox, but very devastating disease before the vaccine was developed and implemented. Now, viruses have a very specific way of working and making us sick. And we're going to go through this more in detail. So next week we're going to have a lecture specifically on the COVID-19 virus. But just basically speaking about viruses in general, the virus, a type of pathogen, enters our body cells, and basically they're able to use our own cells' machinery against us. So if you remember back to when we were talking about DNA, right? So our cells have the structures in place to actually, read our DNA, turn it into RNA, and then produce proteins from that. And so the virus actually takes over these mechanisms from the cell and actually uses that machinery that usually produces our proteins to produce copies of itself. And so you see, before infection, we have maybe a few viral particles hanging around. They gain access to the cell, and they quickly multiply within the cell until after, basically, they cause that cell to rupture or burst, and they release thousands of other viral particles that then go on to infect new cells. And so this is how we see the spreading of specific viruses from cell to cell. Bacteria, another common pathogen, can cause disease by breaking down specific cells or releasing specific toxins. Some common ones that we may have heard of here, strep throat is a very common type of bacteria, botulism, diphtheria, anthrax, E. coli is something that you have to be very mindful about when cooking meats very thoroughly and making sure that your countertops are clean. Another type are what are called protists. These cause disease by feeding off of a host, and a host in this case would be you. So malaria is probably the most common of the protist-based pathogens, which you can get from a mosquito. So you see a mosquito there in the right-hand corner. But there are other types too, including African sleeping sickness that are caused by euglenozoa that causes the disease African sleeping sickness. Worms or specific other types of parasites can also cause diseases. These include things like hookworms and tapeworms that you see down at the bottom here. And these specialize in latching on in specific portions of your body. And so, for example, we see a tapeworm latched onto our intestines. And if we remember back to our discussion about the digestive system, these tapeworms then take nutrients from the foods that we eat and so feed themselves. And finally, fungi, which can penetrate the outer layers of our skin and invade our bodies. These include things like athlete's foot. So you see a pretty nasty image in the lower left corner of a person suffering with athlete's foot, and ringworm. Now, we've kind of run through several types of pathogens that can cause disease in us. These include things like viruses that we've covered, bacteria, protists, worms, and fungi. And now that we know the sort of agents of disease, what things cause disease in us, in the next section, we'll learn how diseases are actually spread.